The beauty of these sorts of events is you get lots of insight, you get lots of perspectives, you get lots of opinions. What I'd like to try and do is just give you a slightly different perspective, slightly broader perspective. This session is about automation. Automation isn't just about automating single tasks, it's about automating the entire business. And what I'd like to do is just give you a perspective of what that means for me, what it means for Nokia, and some of the things that we're doing to really drive that forward. And I think we've heard some repeating comments. I think we heard it from Pascal before, that there's this evolution to become a DSP, right? All the service providers are on this journey. I mean, let's be really honest, just plugging a new network into an existing business model isn't going to turn you into a DSP, right? Doesn't matter how many orchestrators you've got, it doesn't matter how many capabilities you've got, you run the risk of just repeating what you've been doing for many, many years. So technology within the network is an opportunity to rethink that, and that automation scope is much broader than just down at the network. And I'll try and give you a picture of how that comes together. And there's a belief that 5G is an accomplishment of bringing together all the use cases. We've talked about, Pascal did a great example of a use case around SD-WAN. But 5G is where all use cases come together. It's where all the aspects of change come together. It's where all the benefits of NFV, virtualization, rapid deployment of infrastructure all come together. And by definition, that means different processes, different touch points, different OSS, different BSS. If it doesn't, it's just a new version of what you've been doing for many, many years. And the key focus for this is ensuring that the needs of the enterprise or consumers are identified and addressed in digital time, in that moment, not after the fact. And that has a role to play with what Patrick was talking about, is where is artificial intelligence, where is AI? Is it just at the network domain, or is it across the entire business domain? And the use cases need to be deployed and monitored within the speed of business. At the end of the day, these networks and these technologies are being there to differentiate. They're being there not just to give a cheaper network, because that's just a race to the bottom. This is about how can you unlock innovation, new capabilities, new markets. And if you can address new markets, then you've got another balancing act to your TCO equation. And that's really, really important. And if you look at automation as a scope, it's evolving. It's evolving from the repetition of sort of very simple automated manual tasks into automation of business processes, into closed loop, whatever that is in the context of the business. It's many, many things, into essentially AI-driven processing. And that spans the entire business, it spans the entire network space. So let's put that in a little bit of a context of an overall landscape. This isn't about a single part of the network changing. If you look at the work that Nokia and Bell Labs are doing, it's understanding that the entire network domain changed to this Future X narrative, where all the resources are fluid, all the interactions are fluid, all these domains need to come together to manage a true end-to-end service across the entire scope of that business. And that's done by having an adaptive core, a programmable core, understanding how the intelligence is driven into those resources to create a digital value platform. And that digital value platform has a role to play. It has a role to play in promoting innovation, promoting efficiency, monitoring, tracking efficiency, and frankly, working out whether your network is running at the optimum level. That's not individual resources, it's about mapping the business intent to the network intent. How do you create that relationship? And that's not just simple SLAs. That spans the entire problem space of the business landscape. And that becomes the battleground for understanding where are the revenue change, where are the business models, where are the opportunities that are going to be moving forward. So let's try and put this in a scope. Let's try and put this into an overall landscape. I think telcos, I've been doing this for many, many years, they tend to be focused in a inside-out paradigm. And you see it in all the architectures that we have today. It's an understanding of, I own the network, I own the operations, I own the processes, I own the products, I own the services, I'm just pushing them to the market. It's simply a define and push model. And that's worked for many, many years. And it's effective, and it works for them, and has been used as a vehicle to drive forward. But if we look at 5G and we look at the future X network model, there is an opportunity that the service frontier, the boundary of what that service touch point is between the network infrastructure and the capabilities that are being exposed becomes a lot lower. And Patrick talked about it, the evolution of OSS and BSS to support this new paradigm. What was traditionally a very low-level back-office function is now potentially connected directly to your business-to-business interface. It's there to promote an outside-in innovation model to complement the traditional models that telcos have had. And you see over-the-top guys have been doing this for years. They look at their own platforms, they look at their own customers, they look at their own capabilities, and they're able to monetize that very quickly. They have frictionless ways of getting to that point and understanding whether this is a service that succeeds very rapidly. With 5G and network slicing, there is a potential that you can personalize that access. You can personalize that process. Let's consider for the idea that service providers are allowing external organizations to deploy microservices to the edge as part of that service chain. The idea that through a service creation process, they're able to buy the connectivity, deploy their own applications, monitor that service chain in their own time. What does that mean for the telcos? Suddenly they're now having to co-create services, co-manage services. They're having to establish different value chains in helping organizations to build those distributed microservices. And that changes the dynamic of what this model is to become more a demand and pull model. And it's not an either or. This isn't a situation where a telco has to be all in one mode or another. But you certainly see the smaller telcos that see the value proposition that they want to get to is unlocking the value of the network, allowing this outside in. Innovation can come from many, many sources. It's unlikely to come from just looking down and trying to figure out what the next killer app is going to be. So what we're trying to do, particularly with Nokia and Bell Labs and the research that we're doing, is understanding what is that future mode of operations. And the big driver for us is about not just connecting the new network to the old business, but how can we connect the new network to the new business? And more importantly, how can we create a frictionless way to create new business from that network model? How do we allow other people to coexist? And it's funny, I was at an IoT event, and I was talking to a potential customer, and I said, well, why don't you go and speak to the large CSPs? And it was like, well, why would I speak to them? Right? They just want to own my processes, own my data. They want to own their whole capability. They didn't see an opportunity to co-create. They didn't see an opportunity to create some value. And they were trying to create their own ecosystems, their own value platforms. And what do the CSPs have that potentially is unique? Is access to the edge, right? Can we expose that capability and personalize that service chain to create some innovation? Who knows, right? It may or may not. But if you can make it frictionless, people will try. People will try and create those capabilities. So we believe that connecting this digital demand, this outside-in type model, with these new software fluid networks that allow infrastructure on demand, allow choices to be made in terms of where, why, and when, which vendor even, in terms of runtime processes, will create a new control point within the service providers. What's important, though, is it will measure agility and automation. We've been talking about, I saw an analyst report yesterday that said, still the number one thing is time to market for new services. It's always been the number one thing, time to market for new services, right? So there must be fundamentally a wrong way of trying to harvest what are those new services. They're not looking broad enough to understand what those capabilities are, and the tools aren't there to allow them. So we need to be able to measure that. We need to be able to understand what that means in terms of the capabilities, the process, the agility, where AI is being used, how quickly are we rolling these networks out. And finally, it's only the CSPs that are going to be able to do this with abstraction and insight, right? So this is not just about fire and forget automation. This isn't just about templating things and saying, there you go, it's done. It's about being able to create that mapping between what is the business intent, what is the network intent, and creating the right policies to define that, monitor it continuously, end to end, throughout the capability of the business. And it's interesting, with 5G, whenever I have a pure conversation with a technology guy, it's like, oh yeah, whatever, this sounds too incredible, it's never going to happen. You speak to the businesses guys, this is exactly what they want. They want to unlock the value of the platform, unlock the capability that they've got to drive this. So what are the building blocks? And I think Patrick talked about it a little bit in his opening address. Particularly what's familiar to me around the operations domain is around fulfillment and assurance, and I think they are coming together. I think all of these things are coming together. And you see often with telcos, often with vendors like ourselves, you draw hierarchical models just building up top on top of layers, layers on top of layers, because that's how we do it. There's something at the bottom and we need to push it out to the top. And I think that's okay, but that's not going to drive an outside-in view of innovation and consumption. We need to look at how these building blocks come together and where closed loops are. And there are many closed loops. There's closed loops everywhere. And actually what's going to be a key point of analytics and connected intelligence is being able to visualize where all those closed loops are triggering. What are the policies to define those control loops? What is the degradation of authority in terms of can I trigger, can I not trigger? Because that's going to be the measure of automation and efficiency in your business. Are those policies being executed and coming together? So we've seen from the sessions here, we've seen from the industry in general, we've seen this move towards domains. What is a domain? You know what? It can be mapped to a technology. It could be a region. It could simply be a vendor, right? Who knows? But there is going to be this rise of the domains. And these domains are going to do things. They're going to be intelligent capabilities. And we need to be able to understand those domains and connect them together and monitor those processes with insight. And that insight is around analysis, recommendation, data, and action. But it's about then being able to drive the domain or optimization as well. And it's about that 360-degree view of intelligence within the domain, managing what it's responsible for, intelligence at the business domain, mapping those business intent policies to network intents, and being able to understand how that is driving your business more agility-wise to make that difference. So how does that all come together with 5G and 5G slicing? What I like about 5G, and I'm not here to sell whether 5G or network slicing is the utopia. What I like about it is that it brings a lot of these use cases together. It brings the idea that if the telco thinks that all it needs to do is define 5 slices and put them out through their business API, that's it. They're going to recognize all this new revenue. I think he's missing the point. If they think that all they need to do is be able to orchestrate a slice and then say, there you go, we've done it, it's missing the point. The point with slicing is the personalization of that process. It's to be able to partner and create innovation with other people to personalize that end-to-end capability, perhaps with other services being unique and driving their unique value proposition that they can offer. So it exposes what were traditionally outside-in thinking to a new narrative. It also understands that a true slice is actually orchestrating many sub-slices across the domains. So it's understanding how do we model end-to-end, right? Everybody talks about end-to-end. What is end-to-end? How do I define the topology? How do I define the relationships? How do I define the processes, the policies, the closed-loop execution paths? All those exercises need to be driven end-to-end, domain-to-domain, business to business. And equally, it's something new. And I always like things that are new because you could at least come and test it out, right? You could at least come along and say, okay, I don't do this today, so let's look at this model. How can I create perhaps a customizable slice that allows somebody else to deploy their own microservices into that and just push it out there, see what happens, right? Create a frictionless process to allow people to use it. So it becomes a really cool way of at least testing the water, understanding what needs to be changed, understanding whether your existing OSS and BSS are even up to the fight, let alone whether they could even be mapped at all to do this. So it becomes really interesting from that respect. And we hear a lot about cloud native, and we hear a lot about cloud native principles, and we hear a lot about we have to virtualize the network, and it doesn't end just with the VNFs, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if we're trying to turn into a full digitization transformation for these service providers, all the software that's in play has to be cloud native. All the boundaries, all the interfaces, all the scale points need to be cloud native. It's not good enough to just say I'm managing a cloud native network. Every part of that process needs to be done there. Let me just stop that because it'll make me sick after a while. So the process here is we need a set of principles. Those principles are these components, as well as being cloud native, need to be intelligent. They need to have automation built in from the core principles of the beginning. They need to be open. It'd be nice if everybody just bought everything from Nokia, but that's unlikely, right? So we need to be open. We need to be aligned to the standards. We need to hope that the standards at least start to converge onto solving the big problem. I mean, it's fine that they are solving some of the lower level issues, that's great, but I really urge that we look at the end-to-end model, and that's one of the things I quite like about the Zero Touch initiative, that's starting to understand the end-to-end space and understanding that we're moving to this multi-domain environment. And every attempt in the past to solve multi-domain has always failed, right? Let's try and understand how we bring that together. It's important. And it needs to be secure. I think Pascal talked about it before as well. Security is really critical in these environments. And within Nokia software, and particularly within Nokia, we have a common software foundation that drives all of our software, all of our capabilities to these principles. So not only can our software be used to manage the digital infrastructure of the network, but it's also applying to the same principles itself. So how does that all come together? I'm unusual. I'm a Nokia guy that doesn't do network diagrams very often. So this is one diagram that's in there. It's more about the network. It's just understanding that network slicing is about thinking end-to-end. It's about thinking end-to-end of the resources, understanding end-to-end of the business model, end-to-end of the touch points that need to be driven across all of those, and challenging whether or not your existing OSS and BSS could meet that demand. I would speculate by just plugging in a new network, you're not going to meet those goals. And telcos need to understand that they can participate in business models, and network slicing is a great opportunity to do that. And here's just some of the capabilities we have in terms of cloud orchestration, RAN orchestration, optimization, and driving that forward into the next domain. So that's me done. Thank you very much.